welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is going to be about how to fill out the EPIK application form. Now, I do want to throw out a few disclaimers out there. This video is meant to be as a guide, and I'm just providing you with suggestions as to how I filled out my EPIK application and managed to land an interview. So if you feel that there are some things that might resonate with you, then go ahead, you can use whatever suggestions that you feel will apply. Or if there are things that don't apply to you, then you can skip them over. Again, these are just suggestions and not so much a Bible. So let's begin. One of the things I want to point out is that if you are a Mac user, you would want to have Adobe Acrobat Reader installed. And the reason being is that those who are using a Mac, we would normally use the preview program to open up our PDFs and fill them out. And if we do this with the EPIK application form, this will definitely cause a lot of issues, especially when you're sending your application into EPIK or through a recruiter. So before you even open up or even download the EPIK application form, make sure you have Adobe Acrobat Reader installed. Likewise, for those who are using a Windows computer, I am seeing less issues for those who are using a Windows computer, but more so for Mac. So make sure you have those things installed. The second thing I want to point out is that if you are currently doing your TOEFL course and applications have opened up for your intake, I suggest that you try to finish your TOEFL course first and then head into the application form. The reason being is that there is a lesson plan at the end of the application form, and by completing your TOEFL course, this will greatly help you in knowing how to fill that part of the application process out. However, if you are on a tight deadline and you really have to send in your application quick, then go ahead and do so. But another thing that I want to point out is that I'm not going to be going through every single detail of the application form because my style of writing my personal essays and lesson plan might be different to yours. So again, I'm not going to be going through too much detail into those things, but I do go over it to provide you with some suggestions and ideas on how you can stand out in those areas. So let's begin. So I'm on the EPIK website, and if you go to application and apply now, then you'll be able to have access to the application form. So please read the instructions carefully before you even download the application form. If you're on a Mac, please install Acrobat Reader, because if you don't and you just use the default preview application that comes with the Mac, you will have a lot of issues with the application form. So if you go down here, it shows you where you should send your application to, when the application will open, as well as any additional documents that will help you fill your application form. Right now, only the Spring 2019 application form is available, and if you just click on that, it'll download and then you can open right up in Acrobat Reader. So I have the form open up here. Now let's begin. Name on passport and photo. So this is how your name would appear on your passport. So if you go by Jessie, but your full name is Jessica, then you have to write Jessica. If you go by Andy and your full name is Andrew, you have to go by Andrew, because the name that you put here, they will have to use it for your contract and your E2 visa and your notice of appointment, and these have to match with your passport. So please keep that in mind. Here you can upload a photo. So if I were to click on this, click browse, and just choose an image. And there you go. Of course, you don't want to put this kind of image in your application form. If you have received a legal name change, of course, click the box, but go through the application on the first page. It's pretty straightforward, asking for your personal information. If you have Korean heritage, your contact information, please double check your Skype ID as well, because this is what EPIK will use to contact you when they do interview you. Basically, this is asking if you ever lived abroad. This might be for them to kind of have a grasp as to like how easy would it be for you to get a visa on your passport. And of course, your mailing address where they would mail your contract to you. I won't really go through too much in detail about this, but emergency contact and then your educational background. They do want to know your background from primary school or elementary school all the way up into university. So here is where you can click on elementary school, for example, put your name, put the name of the school, city and country, date and date, and then years at school. So this could be 3 years, for example. Make sure you fill it all in. However, if you did attend many schools where you moved a lot or transferred quite a bit, you have to check this box where you can continue to provide the information onto the next page. Going down here, this is where you would provide EPIK with your post-secondary education information. So if you went to college and university, this is where you would add the information. So of course, the name of your institution, location, from and to dates, and then years at school. This is usually like 4 years. If you only attended post-secondary education for 3 years, EPIK's not going to really dig too deep into that because there are many people who fast track during the summertime and during their breaks. Degree, you'll choose whichever option applies to you, your major, and when it comes to your overall grade, they do want to have it in a certain format. For example, if your school's GPA was out of 4, but you got a 3.5 GPA, they would want to see it like this. 3.5 out of 4. They want to know what the highest GPA that one can achieve at your university and what your actual GPA was. Going down here, for those who don't have a teaching license or teaching bachelor's degree and are planning to go through a TEFL course, this is where you can add it in. So for here, you can see that there's different options for you to choose from. So you can choose from your TEFL, TESOL courses, your CELTA licenses, especially if teaching license and whatnot, the program name or issuing authority. So for those in America, this would be like your state. For those who are going with a TEFL course, this could be the name of the company that you're going with. So it could be like one-to-one, or it could be full circle, or it could be global language training. Here's where you can put the issue date or expected date. For example, if you have already completed your certifications, choose issue date and the date that you completed it, or if you're still working on it, put an expected date. Hours in class, if any. If there's none, put 0. And hours online, you can put 120, a numeric value. Current employment, of course, what your job is. So I'm going to say YouTuber, employer, YouTube. Country, I'm just going to say like America. And then December 2018. Now, let's say that you are currently still working at your job and don't plan to quit until you head off to Korea. They do want an end date regardless. So if you're in the spring 2019 intake or onwards, then that means that you can say you're planning to quit on January 2019. It doesn't have to be an exact date. You can say February. But if it's for fall, then it could be like August 2019. Adobe Acrobat Reader will just format the date like this. Status full-time, part-time, and all that. If it was a teaching position, however, then this is where you put the information instead of up here. If you were a teaching assistant that was an actual paid position, then you can put it here instead of up here. If you were a sales associate or if you were a customer service representative, this is where you would put it on top. Pretty self-explanatory. Teaching experience. Now, if you were a student teacher, if you were a daycare worker, if you have coached students how to swim, if you were a skiing instructor, this is where you can put it in. There's so many different options for you to put in here. The main thing is they're asking you if you've had any experience being in an instructional role. So again, student teaching will work, being a ski coach would work, and all of that. And of course, just make sure that every column is filled out. And if it's not full-time, just don't check this box here. If you have more experience than 2 positions, then of course check this box so that you can go to the next page and continue recording the information. So on to the next page. This is for those who are currently with EPIK and are transferring to a different location. So this is where they'll put their referrals and all that stuff. So if you are a first-time applicant, I wouldn't worry about this whatsoever. Now your salary level. There is a chart on the EPIK website where it does tell you, based on your credentials, what salary level you'll be on. Most start off with level 3 or 2, but the minimum requirement is that once you land in Korea, you should be a level 2 at minimum. So just check those boxes out. And you can find this salary criteria on the EPIK website, and I'll make sure to link it in the description box below. Now, if you are applying with another person, like a spouse, this is where they'll put your information. This is important because if you were to apply with your husband or wife or what have you, then they will want to make sure that you are placed together. Now, placement preferences. Now, before you even try to look for Seoul, please make sure that you actually take the effort in to look into different placement options. Seoul in itself is very competitive, but there are many great placements out there. However, if you don't really have a preference and just want to get to Korea, you can always pick flexible. So I'll just pick Busan just to pick an option, but remember there are requirements for Busan. You do need in-class hours. Preference for a later start date, you have the option of choosing the main intake, the late intake, or flexible. I suggest choosing flexible because it is a safer route. This ensures that if main intake is full, then you'll be in late intake. However, if there's room for you in either or intakes, then they can put you anywhere. Now, if you do not secure a placement this term, do you want to be notified of application for fall 2019? This basically means if you are waitlisted, do you want to be transferred over to the fall 2019 intake? Yes or no? I put yes. So we're on to the 4th page of the application, and this is just asking for additional personal information. These are basically the bare requirements that EPIK is looking to screen their applicants. So if you go through every question, read them carefully, and this is a section that you should definitely double check because this could make or break your chances of getting an interview. And there are certain areas where they will ask for clarification. For example, the last question, it says, are you applying with a spouse? If yes, please indicate their full legal name and your relation to them to the right. So this is where you put them. Of course, check yes or no to whichever applies to you. But you must fill out this application fully. Self-medical assessment, they want to know what your health status is. The first question is pretty much a rhetorical question because if you're not willing to go through a medical examination, they will potentially not pass your application over to the interview stage. So just read each question very carefully. So for number 11, on average, how many alcohol beverages do you consume per week? This could be 1, this could be 2, this could be 0, up to you. Many people have put between the numbers of 0 and 1, and there's no harm in doing that, so don't worry. On the 5th page of the application is basically saying, these are our policies, do you agree? And then you just check down the box and make sure that you read each one. So, of course, your first name, middle name, last name, and then you would just print your name there to show that you've signed it, and then the date. When you do have to hand in your physical application form by mail to EPIK, this is where you would sign it in ink. Cannot be signed in electronic form. So if you remember where we filled out our application, where we were recording our education and our work experience, this is where you can record additional information that did not fit in those rows in the first few pages. Now, this is one of the most important pieces of the application form, the personal essays. The personal essays don't really change much between the applications for fall and spring. So if you are planning to apply for the next intake, then you have the current application form that is available on the EPIK website as a guide. We're on to the 7th page of the application form out of 11 pages, and this is one of the most important pieces of your application form. This is where you have 3 personal essays where you have to tell EPIK the reasons why you chose EPIK and what your teaching philosophies are and how you view cultural differences. So I won't tell you exactly how I answer this, but I'll give you some thought-provoking questions to help you think about the content that you can add in here. And the more genuine you come off of in these personal essays, the better, because it shows that you really do want the job and that you are serious about teaching English in Korea. So for the first question where it says, why do you want to teach Ethel? Did you have a teacher who really inspired you to become a really great teacher? Did they teach in a way that really resonated with you or aligned with your learning style? Have you had experience teaching beforehand and you really want to continue teaching and grow as an English teacher or grow as a teacher in general? Things like that. So really what inspired you to become an English teacher? Now, why you want to teach in Korea? Now, I do suggest that if K-pop was the main reason that got you into Korean culture, I suggest that you don't put K-pop down in this personal essay. So, was there anybody in your family that went to Korea and came back with lots of stories that really piqued your interest? Did you have a Korean friend who shared a bit of their culture with you? Were you intrigued with the growing popularity of Korean media? Like, have you traveled to different countries and you've visited Korea once and it really made you want to go back and learn more about the culture? Did you see a lot of international students struggle with their English and you thought that Korea would be a great place for you to kind of pay it forward or contribute to a better society and whatnot? So, moving down to the second question, please explain your teaching philosophy. Basically, what kind of teacher do you want to be? What kind of teacher do you want your students to view you as? And what kind of classroom and lesson plans do you want to provide to your students? Perhaps you want to make sure that all your lessons are fun and engaging and making sure that your students are motivated. Perhaps you want to make sure that your students are always excited to come to class. And what are your goals as a teacher? And how are you able to achieve those goals in the classroom setting with EFL learners? Have you been inspired by teachers' teaching style that you can incorporate into this question? A reminder that there is a word limit per question. So here it says 250 to 300 words, and it has been consistent for most intakes that I've seen. The last question is, share your thoughts on encountering cultural differences. Do you live in a city where you encounter diversity left, right, and center? Were you ever in a position to learn more about a culture and present it? And also, what are your thoughts on encountering cultures different than your own? How do you deal with different cultures and how have you interacted with these cultural differences in the past? The main thing is for this question to answer in a way that shows that you are open-minded, that you really do care about learning about all the cultures, and that you are willing to come in to Korea with an open mind and positive attitude, and to really be willing to adapt really well to a culture that's different from your own. If you scroll down here, there's a questionnaire, and this just helps EPIK to see how they're able to reach potential applicants. So you can click multiple selections and whatnot. Now the lesson plan. In my opinion, the lesson plan is probably one of the hardest because this is how the schools will critique you and how they will decide whether or not they want to take you on. So if your preference is Busan Office of Education, will be looking at your lesson plan to critique if your lesson plan is good enough for the type of positions that they have. Of course, choose your grade level and ability. Most people do elementary and beginner, especially for first-time applicants. So lesson topic, and then have a summary as to what you covered in the previous class. Any additional handouts that you may have. For example, this could be a worksheet, homework sheet. The objective, for example, by the end of the class, students will be able to learn the different names of animals, learn the different rooms of the home, so on and so forth. Key expressions. What kind of key expressions or sentences would you like your students to learn and constantly practice during the course? Any key vocabulary. So if you, for example, you were doing a lesson plan on animals, you can say, etc., etc. I suggest that you cap it up to a certain amount. You don't want to have too much vocabulary words. Greetings and review. How would you really introduce the students as soon as you come into class? This could be reviewing about the previous lesson by playing a cool game or just going over the previous class lesson plan. Presentation and practice and production. Now, I'm not going to go through each one, but basically for each section here, just make sure that you're adding in really engaging activities, making sure that the students have a lot of opportunities to practice their key expressions and vocabulary words, and making sure that activities that you choose make sense to use in this lesson. And also keep in mind of the times here. If you go all the way up to the top, you'll see that the number of students is 30. And then you'll find online that elementary school students will have around 40 minutes, middle school will have 45 minutes, and high school might have 50, but you should double check that. Not completely sure, but this is why it's important for you to do your research. So conclusion, how would you end the class? So for here, like, would you correct any mistakes and errors that you've noticed while students were doing these 3 phases of the lesson plan? Would you go over the homework? Would you go over the activities that you guys went if you guys are doing a handout and whatnot? So basically, how would you end the lesson? Evaluation of objectives. How would you evaluate if your students have reached the goals of today's lesson plan? So if their goal was to learn the zoo animals, how would you evaluate it? Would you ask concept questions, or would you ask them to play a game and to see if they remember what they've learned? Or would you hand out homework and grade them to see what the average score is? Down here is what you will plan to do for the next lesson. I suggest that when you fill this box in, that it relates to what you learned for this current lesson. Because if you jump from random topics, it could be really confusing. One last final tip when you're filling out the lesson plan is to make it as detailed as possible. Think of it like this. You have to make a lesson plan where a substitute teacher is potentially reading this and they are a first-time teacher. The more detail you put into it, the more easier it is for that substitute teacher to follow. This is exactly how you should be filling out your lesson plan, to make it as detailed as possible, as there will be many schools looking at this specific section of your application. So once you have filled out everything and you triple check, make sure that you save it. But once you've saved it, open it again and go through the application again, just to make sure there's no spelling errors, that the drop downs are completely filled out, and there's no typos in your personal essays and lesson plans. Send it to yourself and open the file as well. Do the same thing to make sure there's no typos, there's no blank drop downs, and your answers look completely there. Once you are ready to send off your application, of course, double check one more time just to make sure that the format is correct, making sure that your image is proper, and there you have it. Good luck!